She told me she was pregnant with another man's baby on our wedding day. What happened next changed both our lives forever. Well, hello there, folks. Welcome back to After Her Lies. I'm Frank, your host, and if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button down below. It breaks my old heart to see that 96% of you watching aren't subscribed yet. Come on now, it's free, and it helps an old-timer like me keep sharing these stories that need telling. Today, I want to tell you about Margaret. Sweet, beautiful Margaret with her golden hair and eyes like summer sky. This happened back in 1985 when I was 28 and thought I knew everything about love and trust. Boy, was I wrong. I'd been working construction in Denver, saving every penny for months to buy Margaret the ring she deserved. A full carat diamond cost me 3 months' wages, but she was worth every dollar. We'd been together 2 years, and I was ready to make her my wife, start a family, build that white picket fence life we'd talked about on those long Sunday drives through the Colorado mountains. The proposal was perfect. I took her to Red Rocks, right there where we'd had our first date, watching the sunset paint those sandstone cliffs orange and pink. She said yes, tears streaming down her face, and I thought I was the luckiest man alive. We set the date for October 5th, just 3 months away. Those 3 months flew by like pages in the wind. Margaret threw herself into wedding planning with a passion I'd never seen. She picked out flowers, tasted cakes, tried on dresses. I was working overtime to pay for everything, coming home exhausted but happy, knowing it was all for our future together. But looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. How she'd started eating crackers in the morning, claiming her stomach was upset. How she'd stopped drinking wine at dinner, saying she was on a health kick. How she'd become emotional over little things, crying at commercials on TV. I thought it was just wedding stress. Lord, how blind I was. The morning of our wedding dawned crisp and clear. October in Colorado, you know, with those golden aspen leaves dancing in the breeze. I was nervous as any groom should be, adjusting my tie for the 100th time in the little room behind the chapel. My best man, Jimmy Patterson, was cracking jokes to calm my nerves. Everything was perfect. The chapel looked like something from a fairy tale, with white roses and baby's breath everywhere. Margaret's mother had outdone herself with the decorations. Our families filled the pews, all smiles and happy tears. The photographer was snapping away, capturing what should have been the happiest day of our lives. I stood at that altar, heart pounding, watching the doors for my bride. The organ started playing, and there she was. Margaret, in her grandmother's wedding dress, looking like an angel walking down that aisle. But something was wrong. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking so bad she could barely hold her bouquet. The ceremony began beautifully. Pastor William spoke about love and commitment, about the sacred bond of marriage. We exchanged vows, mine from the heart, hers whispered so quietly I could barely hear them. When it came time for the rings, I slipped that diamond band on her finger with all the love in my soul. But then, just as Pastor Williams was about to pronounce us husband and wife, Margaret grabbed my arm. Her grip was like iron, and her eyes were wide with panic. "Frank," she whispered, loud enough that the front rows could hear. "I need to tell you something. Before we do this." The chapel fell silent. You could hear a pin drop on those polished floors. Pastor Williams looked confused, and I felt my heart start racing for all the wrong reasons. "What is it, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We can talk after—" "No," she interrupted, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. "I have to tell you now. I'm pregnant, Frank. 3 months pregnant." The world stopped. I mean, completely stopped. I could hear my pulse in my ears, and for a moment I thought I might pass out right there at the altar. Pregnant. My mind raced. 3 months. We'd been careful, but these things happen. We'd just start our family sooner than planned. I squeezed her hands, trying to smile. "That's wonderful, Margaret. A little unexpected, but wonderful. We'll figure it out together." But the tears kept coming, and she was shaking her head. That's when I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew what was coming next. "It's not yours, Frank." Those 4 words hit me like a freight train. The chapel erupted in gasps and whispers. My mother let out a cry. Margaret's father stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. "What did you say?" I asked, though I'd heard her perfectly clear. "The baby isn't yours," she sobbed. "It's David's. David Chen from my office. We've been seeing each other for 4 months. David Chen. I knew him. Tall, handsome architect at the firm where Margaret worked as a secretary. Always dressed perfectly, drove a BMW, everything I wasn't. I'd met him at her office Christmas party, shook his hand, even complimented his tie. The chapel was in chaos now. People were standing, talking, some heading for the doors. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, holding the hands of the woman I loved, the woman who just destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Why? Was all I could manage to ask. She looked up at me with those blue eyes I'd fallen in love with, now red and swollen with tears. "Because I love you both, Frank. I love you both, and I didn't know how to choose. I thought if I married you, I could forget about him. But I can't bring a child into this world built on lies. Love us both." The words cut deeper than any blade. How do you love 2 people? How do you plan a wedding with one man while carrying another man's baby? I should have been angry. I should have screamed, thrown the ring, stormed out of that chapel and never looked back. But all I felt was empty, hollow, like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out everything that mattered. "Frank, please say something," she whispered. I looked out at all those faces staring at us. My family, her family, our friends, everyone waiting to see what the groom would do when his bride confessed to adultery at the altar. And then something strange happened. I thought about Margaret's face when I'd proposed. The joy, the tears, the way she'd thrown her arms around me. I thought about all our plans, all our dreams, the house we'd picked out, the names we'd chosen for our future children. 2 years of memories, of laughter, of love that I'd thought was real. "Do you love him more than me?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "I don't know. I'm so confused, Frank. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. For 4 months, it happened." Pastor Williams cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should—" "No," I said, surprising myself. "Margaret, look at me." She opened those blue eyes. "Do you want to marry me today? Right now, with all these people watching, knowing what I know. I don't know if I deserve... That's not what I asked. Do you want to be my wife? She nodded, tears streaming. Yes. God help me. Yes. The chapel was dead silent. I could feel every eye on us, waiting. My mother was crying. Her father looked ready to drag her out of there himself. I took a deep breath. Pastor Williams, continue the ceremony. You should have heard the reaction. People gasping, someone shouting, "Are you crazy?" But I held up my hand, and somehow the chapel quieted down. Margaret, I said, and my voice was stronger than I felt. I love you. I've loved you since the day we met at Murphy's Diner, when you spilled coffee all over my work shirt and tried to pay for my dry cleaning. I love your laugh, the way you sing off-key in the shower, how you cry at sad movies. I love the woman you are, not the mistakes you've made. She was sobbing now, ugly crying right there in her grandmother's wedding dress. I don't understand why you did this, I continued. I'm hurt beyond words. But I'm not giving up on us. Not yet. If you'll have me, if you'll let me, I want to be your husband and that baby's father. The gasps were louder now. Even Pastor Williams looked shocked. Frank, you can't be serious, someone called out. Probably her father. But I was serious. Standing there in that chapel with my world crumbling around me, I made the biggest gamble of my life. I chose love over pride, hope over hurt. Margaret Elizabeth Torres, will you marry me today, right here, right now, with all our sins and secrets laid bare? She looked at me like I'd just offered her salvation itself. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Frank Michael O'Connor, I will marry you. Pastor Williams, bless his heart, continued the ceremony. Half the chapel had emptied by then, but the people who mattered stayed. My mother, tears streaming down her face but nodding her support. My brother Jack, who'd driven down from Wyoming. Margaret's best friend Sarah, who'd been her maid of honor. We were pronounced husband and wife in front of maybe 30 people instead of the 100 who'd started. When Pastor Williams said I could kiss the bride, I did, and it tasted like salt from her tears and hope for our future. But the story doesn't end there, folks. Oh no. That was just the beginning. The reception was awkward as you'd expect. Most people had left, but we had it anyway. Margaret barely ate, still sick from morning sickness and the stress of what had happened. I danced with my new wife to Unchained Melody, the same song we'd danced to on our first date, while whispers followed us around the room. That night, in the hotel room I'd booked for our wedding night, we talked until sunrise. Margaret told me everything. How she'd met David at a work conference. How it had started innocent. Just coffee. Then lunches. Then more. How she'd tried to break it off when I proposed but couldn't. How she'd only realized she was pregnant 2 weeks before the wedding. I was going to run, she admitted, as we watched the sun come up over downtown Denver. I had a bag packed. I was going to leave you a note and disappear. Why didn't you? Because I realized I couldn't live with myself if I did. You deserved the truth, even if it destroyed everything. We canceled our honeymoon to Hawaii. Instead, we spent a week in that hotel room, talking, crying, trying to figure out if our marriage had any chance of surviving. I called in sick to work. She did the same. We ordered room service and watched old movies and slowly, piece by piece, started building something new from the wreckage of our old relationship. The hardest part was telling our families what we'd decided. My mother thought I'd lost my mind. Margaret's parents were convinced their daughter had ruined her life. But we were determined to make it work. 3 months later, David Chen moved to Seattle for a new job. I never knew if Margaret asked him to leave or if he decided on his own that staying would be too complicated. I never asked, and she never said. Some truths are better left buried. 6 months after our wedding, little Sarah was born. Sarah Margaret O'Connor, 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect baby girl with dark hair and almond-shaped eyes that left no doubt about her parentage. But when the nurse placed her in my arms for the first time, none of that mattered. She was mine. Not by blood, but by choice, by love, by the promise I'd made at that altar. Being a father to another man's child isn't easy, I won't lie to you. There were moments, especially in those early years, when I'd look at Sarah and see David's features staring back at me. But there were more moments when I'd see Margaret's smile or my own stubbornness in her personality, and I'd remember that family isn't just about DNA. Margaret never contacted David about Sarah. We agreed that our daughter deserved stability, not confusion. As far as Sarah knew, I was her daddy. Period. And I was. I changed her diapers, walked the floors with her when she had colic, taught her to ride a bike, scared away boyfriends when she got older. Our marriage wasn't perfect. How could it be, starting the way it did? There were times when the trust felt fragile, when a late night at work or a friendly conversation with another man would send me spiraling into doubt. Margaret knew this, and she was patient with my insecurities, transparent about everything in a way that slowly rebuilt what her confession had shattered. We went to counseling. Father Martinez at St. Catherine's recommended a therapist, Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, who'd worked with couples dealing with infidelity. We saw her every week for 2 years, learning how to communicate, how to forgive, how to build a marriage on honesty instead of the fantasy I'd been living in before our wedding day. The breakthrough came during one session when Mrs. Rodriguez asked Margaret why she'd told me the truth at the altar instead of after the ceremony, or not at all. Because, Margaret said, reaching for my hand, I realized that if I could lie to Frank about something that important, I could lie to him about anything. And a marriage built on lies isn't a marriage at all. It's just 2 people pretending to love each other. That night, we made love for the first time since our wedding. Really made love. Not just the careful, tentative attempts we'd made before. It was like we were finally married, finally starting our real life together. 2 years later, Margaret got pregnant again. This time, there was no doubt, no question, no doubt about parentage. Little Michael was born with my green eyes and Margaret's stubborn streak, and Sarah, now a toddler, was immediately protective of her baby brother. We had 2 more children after that. Emma, born in 1991, and Daniel in 1994. 4 kids, a house in Littleton with that white picket fence I'd dreamed of, and a marriage that was stronger for having survived its rocky start. But life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. In 2003, when Sarah was 18 and about to graduate high school, she came to us with questions. She'd been looking through old photo albums, doing a family tree project for her senior English class, and she'd noticed things. How she looked different from her siblings. How there were no baby pictures of her, with me from the hospital. Margaret and I had always planned to tell her the truth someday, but 18 years had passed, and somehow that day had never felt right. Now we didn't have a choice. We sat her down in our living room on a Sunday afternoon. Margaret held my hand so tight I thought she might break my fingers. We told her everything. About David, about the wedding day confession, about the choice we'd made to build our family despite the complicated beginning. Sarah listened without saying a word. When we finished, she was quiet for so long, I thought she might never speak to us again. Finally, she looked at me with those dark eyes that weren't mine by blood, but were mine by love, and said, "So you chose me. Before you even knew me, you chose me." Every day since, I told her. Every single day. She hugged me then, and I knew our family was going to be okay. Sarah did reach out to David eventually, when she was in college. Found him through social media, sent him a letter. He was married by then, had 2 kids of his own in Seattle. They exchanged a few emails, shared some pictures, but it never became more than that. She said it was important to her to know where she came from medically. But I was her dad, and that was never going to change. Margaret and I were married for 38 years. 38 years from that dramatic wedding day until cancer took her in 2023. 38 years of mortgage payments and parent-teacher conferences and family vacations and all the beautiful, ordinary moments that make a life. She died knowing she was loved completely, forgiven fully, and that our choice to stay together that October day had been the right one. She died surrounded by our 4 children, 8 grandchildren, and me, the man who'd chosen to see her confession not as betrayal, but as the beginning of our real love story. At her funeral, Sarah spoke for all our children. She said that Margaret had taught them that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other again and again, especially when it's hard. That the strongest marriages aren't the ones that never face storms, but the ones that learn to dance in the rain. I'm 72 now, living alone in that house in Littleton, still sleeping on my side of the bed out of habit. Our kids visit regularly, and the grandkids keep me busy. But I wanted to share this story because I see so many young couples today who think love means never having to face hard truths or make difficult choices. Real love isn't what you see in the movies. It's messier than that, more complicated. It's choosing to stay when you have every reason to leave. It's rebuilding trust one day at a time. It's seeing someone at their worst and deciding they're still worth fighting for. Margaret made a terrible mistake. She hurt me in ways I'm still processing, even after all these years. But that mistake led to the most beautiful life I could have imagined. Sarah, who became a pediatric nurse and has saved more lives than I can count. Michael, who followed me into construction and now runs his own company. Emma, who teaches high school English and makes me proud every day. Daniel, who serves our country as a Marine and has his grandmother's fierce loyalty. None of them would exist if I'd walked away that day. Our story would have ended before it really began. So that's my story, folks. That's why this channel is called After Her Lies, because sometimes the most beautiful truths come after the hardest lies are told. I hope it helps some of you out there who might be facing your own impossible choices. Love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to make a choice between love and pride? How did it turn out? I read every comment, and your stories help me as much as I hope mine helps you. And please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Like I said at the beginning, 96% of you watching aren't subscribed yet, and that makes this old man a little sad. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it helps me keep sharing these stories that need telling. Until next time, this is Frank from After Her Lies, reminding you that sometimes the best chapters of our lives begin with the worst pages. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.